So when you go about this maneuver, get to where you can do this pretty quick and comfortable, all right? I want you guys to be free and loose with your legs so that they can work underneath of you and your hands can do something different. That is like rule number one. You have to be able to use your hands and your feet separate of each other. If you can't use your hands to do one thing and your feet to do another, you're gonna have a monster of a time trying to train your horse, right? So get to where, good afternoon everybody. I'm Jeremy LaRose. This is LSH Live number, I don't know, 16 or 17. Today I'm gonna cover a little bit about spurs. We did the video on hands and bits and stuff. Today I wanna cover spurs and spur usage and how I go about doing all that kind of stuff. And how we use our legs. So these are things that I wish people knew before they came to me, okay? So again, this kind of goes back to the overarching idea, like I want, like if everybody came to me, if every client came to me and they had these fundamental skills down, life would be so much easier, right? So just like any trainer, I'm sure would appreciate this kind of stuff. And the way I come up with this kind of stuff is because I've watched for a long time, okay? So howdy everybody. I'm a little sick today, so I'm gonna try to do this as best as I can. Sorry for not getting you guys to yesterday. We went to the horse show yesterday, went to the Easter extravaganza. We went live on Instagram for just a little bit, tried that. I'd never gone live on Instagram before, so tried to see how that worked out. Joan, you're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoy them. So everybody want to say hello, want to leave a comment. Thank you so much for all of that. You guys are amazing. Lynn Turner, yes, you are very welcome. Very welcome. I've been meaning to do this video for a long time. I've got some techniques and maneuvers that I do with my hands and my feet that I want everybody to know how to do, right? So hopefully you've all been practicing how to go 1 to 2-handed. I think that's really important. You guys need to know how to do that. That's huge to me. You cannot work with your horse if you can't move up and down the reins. So by the same token, it is so hard to work with your horse if you can't use your feet effectively, okay? These are our tools, right? My hands and my spurs are my communication with my horse. So I wanna make sure everybody's solid on those fundamental things because it's so hard to work with your horse otherwise that you just can't get an effective line of communication, okay? So a couple things I wanna go over first, the different types of spurs that I use. I always laugh. I went to a couple different barns throughout the years. I went to go look at horses and I would show up. I mean, I drive a car around everywhere I go, so I would show up and I just wore my boots, right? I'm not gonna wear my spurs in the car. And I would get there and I'd be like, all right, you have a pair of spurs I could borrow? And they'd be like, well, you didn't bring spurs? And I'm like, dude, if you came to my barn, I got spurs for you to use. I got lots of them for you to use. Because you can't, what are you gonna do? You're gonna own 1 pair of spurs for 90 horses, right? Like it's not a one size fits all. If I look at my toolbox, if I'm a professional mechanic and I look at my toolbox, you have 1 wrench, 1 screwdriver, right? This to me, these are our tools, right? So when it comes to bits, when it comes to spurs, I use a wide variety, I use an assortment because I do not think you can get the job done, okay? I've never built a house, but I relate working horses a lot to that, building a foundation and all that. To me, if I'm laying a foundation down and someone's building a house, they're not gonna use 1 hammer and 1 screwdriver and 1 saw blade for everything, right? It does not work that way. I'm not cookie cuttering these horses and just trying to make them be whatever I want them to be, okay? This is about working with your horse so that we can pick the best equipment for that horse, okay? I have a certain feel that I go for off my feet, and everybody's gonna have that. Everybody's gonna have a certain texture of that horse's body that they're looking to get, okay? So when you do that, when you go about that kind of stuff, I know what texture I like. That's not the same as some of my non-pros, right? It's not the same as some of my youth kids. So what I try to do is I try to teach them what that texture is, and I say, okay, look, we've got this texture in our horse's sides, right? If their sides are bracy, if it feels like I'm pushing on a brick wall, I'm upset about it. All right? If it feels like I'm pulling on a brick wall, I'm upset about it. And I know that I've got more work to do. My commitment to my horse, like I said in the bit video, is that I'm going to be soft no matter what. All right? So whether it's with my hands or my feet, my commitment to my horse is that I'm going to be soft. So I will change my equipment if my horse does not allow me to be soft. Okay? So if I go to push on his face and he leans against me and throws his head on me, I'm going to move up equipment. By the same token, if I go to put a spur on him, I'm going to start really light. If he leans on that, I'm going to go a little bit sharper. If I'm on a light spur and he kicks out at it, I've got a problem, right? I got to go back and I got to address what my horse understands to do, okay? So there's some amount of working with my horse, some amount of horse training that I'm looking for, that I want my horse to be soft with me, right? I do not want him to run from my feet, but I don't want him to sit on him too much either. There's a fine line. Again, we talk about that pendulum, whether your horse is over here on the too soft side or over here on the too dull side. There's that pendulum between going back and forth always, always. Whether your horse is first year of training, 8th year of training, whatever it is, your horse is going to have that pendulum. He's either on one side of the spectrum or he's on the other, or it's showtime and we're right in the middle and we're perfect, right where I want him to be, okay? Rarely does that ever happen as we planned, right? We want to be as close to the middle as we can. A lot of times we fall in this range. You don't want to be in this range, okay? So when we go show horses, we're trying to get them as tuned in as possible. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. And that's just the way it goes, right? These are living, breathing animals. So none of this stuff is like hard set rule where you can just be, this is what it is, all right? So this is always going to be changing and evolving because your horse is always changing and evolving. Sometimes I've had really good horses have bad days. Sometimes I've had really bad horses have great days, okay? My spurs, my equipment will change depending on how my horse is feeling for that day. Don't be so married to your equipment that you can't change and get off and just swap equipment, right? It's not like you okay, I picked these for the day. Good luck, everybody. You know what I mean? Like, get out there and say, hey, you know what? I had these spurs on. It wasn't enough. My horse leaned all over me. And that's just, it is what it is, right? Don't be so set in your ways to, like, I know getting off, personally, getting off and back on sucks, right? To have to get off, change equipment, get back on, it sucks. We're so hesitant to do that as riders that we oftentimes get stuck with our horses. So don't get stuck. If you need to change equipment, just get off and change equipment. It will save you a lot of time and headache in the long run, okay? So, with that being said, if you guys remember the lesson I gave you on bits where you put it in your hand or you put it in your arm and use the bit, it's the same type of thing with my spurs, okay? The things that matter with spurs are shank length and rowel, okay? And it depends on this right here. So there's 3 things I look for with spurs. 1 is, how long is my shank? 2 is, where does my shank go? All right, and 3 is, what kind of rowel do I have and where does that rowel sit? All right, so I'm going to run you through some of the equipment that I use on a daily basis. I'm going to take you through my personal kind of progress track with my horse. These spurs right here, if you guys remember, if you saw the videos from before, I ride a lot in these zebra spur straps. So thank you so much for Macy for providing me with the pink zebra spur straps. These are my colt breaking spurs right here. Okay. The reason why I like these on most of my colts is because this rowel, or the shank, comes up and the spur's right there. So if you drew a straight line across there, you can see how the rowel sits beneath the shank. Okay. What I like about this is that my horse can then sit on this right here. So before I ever go to my spur, right, the horse sits on this spot, this little flat spot right here. So this is kind of dull. It's dull with the option to get aggressive if I need to. You know what I mean? So like right there, if this were my horse's side, I'm going to take my foot, I'm going to press it up into him. He's going to sit on this shank and my rowel doesn't even touch him, right? If you guys can see that. So then when I need more, I'll tilt my foot and I'll let the rowel kind of work right there, right? I like these spurs a lot. This is a really good colt starting spur for me, and it's kind of how I go and I start everything in these type of rowels, okay? The other piece of that is the kind of next step up would be something like these two right here, where there's a little less to sit on and the spur comes in a little bit quicker, right? So those are almost on the same line. Again, the same type of thing where this shank sits up high, okay? That means the shank is going to hit when I go to wrap my foot underneath, and I'll show you how I use my spurs as soon as we get started here. I'll use my spurs underneath and pry. It means it's going to sit on this shank first, and then my rowel is going to engage, all right? Again, a nice soft rowel here, nothing aggressive. These are what I start colts in. So this is my everyday go-to pair of spurs right here. Somewhere between what I just showed you, this, and these. All right, and these are kind of almost the exact same thing. You can see that as these. Almost the exact same shank. Okay, but when you pick out spurs, you want something that will allow you to get underneath. Shipley, hello, how are you? So coming in underneath here, this is what I'm looking for. Okay, I want something I can come underneath my horse and pry. All right, spurs, the length of your shank gives you leverage. all right? So the shorter this is, the less leverage I'm gonna have. That's not necessarily a bad thing when I go to work with my horses, okay? Once we get into a little more broke horses, we can get into a little bit more aggressive shank, a little bit more aggressive type of rowel, okay? So this is more of a show, Western Pleasure show. Jerry Lynn House, how are you doing? So right here, this is a little bit more aggressive type of shank and rowel. Like this rowel is a little bit sharper. The shank's pretty long, which is gonna give me a ton of leverage when I come up underneath my horse, okay? What I like about something like this is the shank still comes up, so I still have this flat spot that I can put on the horse and let it just kind of rest and sit right there, all right? So this is, again, something I can come in. It's nice and soft in the beginning, and I have the option, if my horse leans on me, to get a little bit more aggressive, and you are very welcome, Jane. So with that in mind, we move up into kind of what I try to get all my horses into, which is this kind of shank right here. This is my finished horse Western Pleasure shank. It doesn't tip up quite so much, right? If you look at how high the rowel is off the shank right there, it doesn't tip up quite so much, and there's less of a little bridge right there for my spur to sit on. Okay, so this is gonna be a spur that I can really get underneath my horse, really apply pressure and lift, right? So if you can imagine both spurs coming in, I'm gonna come in, both got them sitting right there, and I'm gonna apply pressure. I guess I can turn these around so you can see them. Okay, so I'm right here. My legs will come in. I'll show you how I bring my legs in here in just a minute. Maybe. All right, right here, legs come in underneath, and now I can apply pressure and pry that horse up to me, all right? I'm squeezing that horse underneath. I'm starting from the top, so when I go to my legs, you can imagine if this is my knee right here, this is my knee, this is my spur, this is my hand. I'm coming in underneath. I'm gonna squeeze my calves and my knees first, down to my lower leg, wrap in underneath, and pry, okay? So when I do that, you'll always see me when I'm doing my demonstrations, I'm coming up like this. This is what I want my horse to do, right? I want my horse to come in, round up, tuck this piece right here. So I bring my legs in underneath and pull him up to me, all right? That staying in, that squeezing, when I do that, I'm starting with my calf, I'm wrapping underneath, and I'm feeling that texture all the way down to the bottom of that horse. Feeling that texture is so, so, so important. If I go to my calves and my horse goes whew, right to me, I've got to make a decision. I'm either going to stay with my feet in because that was too quick, right? And my horse is maybe a little bit too edgy and is a little bit too tight, or I'm going to take it and drop out, right? Because it's about when you get out. It's about when you release. So if my horse comes up to me, and it's exactly what I wanted, it's the right timing and feel and pressure that I want, then I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna reach down and pet it, right? So doing this kind of stuff, I always tell people the way your leg should come into a horse, the way that you should ask with your leg is no different than if you were driving a car on ice at a stoplight, all right? So if you can imagine when I've got my legs and I start to wrap in around that horse and I wrap in here, it's no different than if I was at the stoplight. I'm gonna just kind of ease into the pedal, and then once I get rolling, I can press on it, all right? We ride really tight and really close with our legs throughout our whole ride because I wanna feel if that horse starts to fall. Okay, if you guys read that blog post that I did about the thinking of your horse and shaping your horse in 3 dimensions, right? It's not just left to right, it's not just front to back, it's up here too. So if I keep both of my legs wrapped around him, I'm kind of setting the height of his belly away from the ground, right? I'm kind of measuring that. If I feel like he's really pressing into me and my legs are just sitting underneath him like this and I feel his belly start to fall into me and pull my spurs down, better believe I'm going to apply some pressure underneath and say, hey, get back up to me, get round, all right? And I've done a lot of lessons these days where I'm talking about get your horse to come up to you and get round. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you would have seen that little story post I did. I do those quick little tips every day. I think Macy was riding Marley, and I talked about how that saddle was breaking off that horse's back, right? So that horse has got to come up and be round right here. I'm going to use my spurs to help gather that horse up. And every time I go to my feet, it means come here and do this, right? So when that horse does this and picks up underneath of me, when I go to my feet, I'm in way more control. Excuse me, I'm trying to fight through being sick. I'm in way more control, right? So coming out there, I don't want my horse to go that way when I go to my feet, and I don't want him just shaped flat to the ground. I want him to come up first and then do something up here, all right? And to me, that's huge, huge, huge. Your horse has to do that. So driving that car on ice, right? Feather that gas pedal. Once you're in, you can press on it. And you'd be surprised how hard you can press on it if you come in nice and soft. All right, and it's the same thing if you guys have watched me ride these horses, you watch me ride Peanut, I'm gonna come in soft. You'd be surprised how tight I can be to her and how much I can ask for if I've come in slow and soft at first. Okay, so if there's one overarching theme of this whole deal and what I want my horses to be, it's I ride slow and methodical. All right, my training program, the way I've gone about this, and the way I've done everything, yeah, I'm so focused on the maneuvers because I think that's what we can coach a horse to do. It is their God-given talent to lope. It's not my job to teach a horse how to lope. It's my job to guide him through the maneuvers that will allow him to use his body in a way that will be good and will put him in an athletic spot to get the most out of him. All right? So I think about it a lot like an athlete. I go back to that analogy a lot. It's not my job to teach my horse or my athlete how to move, right? Nobody had to teach LeBron James how to run down a court. It just was God-given talent. What they did was taught him the proper form for shooting, and he taught them a lot about it too, all right? So keep that in mind when you're working with your horse. It's your job to coach them through the maneuvers. So when you go to your hands and your feet, you've got to be good and solid in what you're doing in order for that to translate well to your horse, okay? So with that being said, how do we go about getting solid in our maneuvers, right? So I talked to you before about going 1 to 2 hands. I strongly, strongly urge you to be practicing that. Be able to go 1 to 2 hands. It's not glamorous. It's not flashy. It's not fancy. It's not going to turn your horse from barely loping to loping like a Congress rock star overnight. But what it is going to do is it's going to put you in the position where you could create that down the road. And I see people just ignore this part. They don't worry about it. They're like, I'll just ride the way I ride. It's fine. I strongly believe you cannot train your horse to do anything if you're not comfortable moving up and down those reins, okay? Because horses learn from the release. So if you can't go to tight and create a spot for them to be in and then turn loose and have them relax, you can't train, right? You're going to have a heck of a time. So, Randy, you made it. Glad to see you. So I'm going to put these spurs on. I'm going to walk you through a couple of these maneuvers. So one of the things that I really work on a lot in the beginning with all of my riders, and I think what really separates the men from the boys when it comes to top level showing is having good leg control, all right? So what I mean by that is when you come in with your legs, are you solid with your legs, or are you bouncing all over the saddle and you're just not effectively communicating, right? So when I think of this stuff, it's so hard to teach and train your horse if you can't make a solid shape. Right? If I don't tell my horse to be in this position right here, loping at you, it's going to be really hard for me. Like if he's right here, it's going to be really hard for me if I'm not solidly wrapped around him. All right? So if you guys follow along with the showmanship, you know that I'm huge on making sure you guys are comfortable on the ground before you ever get on their back, because that is something that you can practice at home. Okay? We need something as horse trainers. We need something that you amateurs can do at home that you don't have to get on the horse and learn it, right? This is muscle memory stuff that you should know before you ever come on and say, you know what, I'm going to win the Congress. To me, if I look at this stuff, you cannot make it out of your cut at Congress if you can't do this, okay? To me, it's that black and white. And the better you are at this stuff, the more you're going to be likely to make it out of your cut. Okay, because if you master these techniques, these maneuvers, and these ideas, you're going to understand when your horse gets flat, and you're going to keep it round and driving a little bit more. Okay, so what I have to do is we have to understand the scissored position with our horse. We've got to understand this foot back. So if I'm loping my left lead, we've got to understand first square. Okay, so I'm going to step back a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see all this. This is toes out over my knees, hips open. Okay, so my hips, I want 45 degrees out to the wall. At least. I want my toes to match that 45-degree angle. All right? What that does for me is it puts me in a nice, balanced, secure position here. All right? I don't need to be secure front to back. The saddle holds me in right there. Right? What I do need to be secure in is left to right. This is what my stirrups do for me. I want to be able to push into my stirrups and move with my horse left to right. Okay, so you see how my upper body doesn't need to move to do that? I could be working on my horse right here and work through these different maneuvers and keep my upper body square to do that. All right? So get really comfortable in this position right here because this is where you're going to spend a lot of your time. All right? So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to apply pressure off my feet. this is pressing down into my stirrups with my toes. So when we ride, we sit in the saddle, we have the stirrups, our toes, ball of our foot on the stirrup. So that should sit just right there. That gives me leverage. So hopefully you guys can see my feet. I'll back up a little bit. So I'm right here. I want to be able to get on my tiptoes. Okay, so right there, be really comfortable pulling that horse up to me. If you watch my transitions, if you watch the 2-year-olds, if you watch the broke horses, if you watch any of them, you see my transitions, I lift up out of the saddle. This is what I'm doing. Okay, it's not just simply like bouncing up out of the saddle. I'm standing up in the stirrups while I pull my spurs up into them. If I stand up in the stirrups off my toes, if you look at where my shank is right here, when I do that, it's going to pull my spur up into my horse's belly. What that's going to look like on a horse that doesn't lift with me is it's going to look like I leave and my horse lopes, right? If they move together, we do this. That you don't see us leave each other and then come up, okay? So what it looks like in the beginning is I will lope my horse off like this, and it's real aggressive, okay? It's really abrasive. So what I want is I want a horse that I can grab my spurs underneath and lope up like this. You see the spur underneath right here, lope up underneath of me, okay? That's the idea that I'm going for. So when I go to my feet and I go to my transitions, right here, like that, okay? Then you can see how much I lift up, right? I'm coming this high up off their back. On a horse that comes up to me, we both come up off the ground. That lope up transition or that jog up transition to me is huge. It's not a jog off or a lope off, okay? When we start doing that, we're in trouble. Our lope offs go this way, okay? So I want my horse to come up in his body, back over his back end, and drive underneath, all right? So that's always up, back, through, okay? Up, back, through. And if you go to the horse show and you watch, just sit in the stands and keep your eyes right on the fence and just watch people's seats, okay? Go to the big shows, go to the Congress or somewhere where you can find really high-end trainers and watch the way that their seats move in the saddle because it is fundamentally different, right? There's a change, a shift that happens when you get your horse really broke that he does this and sits back and drives through. Sits back and drives through. It's a huge difference between this, okay? And if you just watch your transitions, put a camera up just like this on a little tripod, set up on a wall, and watch your transitions. Put your hand down in the saddle and watch to see when you kiss and you lift your spurs up into that horse, does he come this way and then lope? Or does he go this way and lunge and leap over the top of your transition, right? If he does this, he's going to pull himself. See how my hand has to do that? He's going to come up and over and pull himself forward. I don't want a horse that pulls himself forward. I want him to push himself, okay? So I want him to push up into the air. Push up and propel himself that way. Push up, propel himself. Not pull on the bottom, all right? So you can listen to your horse lope. You can listen to the way they do things and say, my horse is pulling himself over the top of his lope, and that's a lope that looks like this. And those riders are going to do this, right? Or a lope that rocks underneath, okay? So you can watch their seat, and they're going to be like this, okay? That's what you want to find. Find the ones that are loping here, through their horse, up and back and through their stride. Not over the top and pull underneath, because that's what happens, and it's just ugly to watch, okay? So, maneuver number one, get your toes and your legs 45 degrees, be able to come right here, okay? Once you can do that pretty accurately, come back here. Slide your outside leg back. We're going to be loping right lead. Slide that leg up into them. Pull the spurs up, okay? Be able to do this, horsemanship position, pleasure position, whatever it is. Be able to use your feet round up into your horse, okay? The other maneuver I do a lot of is I'll have my riders stand square, and we're going to carve, okay? We'll carve like this. Notice how I'm making big swoops with my leg. What I want you to focus on when you do this is pay attention to the actual line in the dirt. I want to keep all of my weight on the ball of my foot, okay? If you do that, if you're standing in an arena, what you'll find is you cut down and you carve a line in the dirt. So hopefully you guys can see that. I'll carve a little bit here. Can you guys see these loops that I make? Okay? The other piece I want you to keep in mind when I'm doing this is that I've done a ton of this in my life. I'm used to sliding my leg back and then applying pressure. If I get used to that, what you'll find is there's a midline right here that my spur or my heel always comes back to when I make my carve. And I'm going backwards so I can't see it. I just know where it feels. Okay? So I'll do this quickly so you can see it. See how I'm balanced and square through that? That all of my feet came back to my midline. When you start this, it's gonna look like this, like your feet are just cement blocks coming through there. Or B, you don't keep pressure on your toe and there's no actual carve, which means you floated your stirrup, which is bad because that's my balance left to right. So you don't want to float your stirrup when you go to move your horse around. And B, you're going to step big on one side because you got one strong leg and shallow on the other. And big on one side and shallow on the other. And big on one side and shallow on the other. And you can see what that does, okay? So when you go about this maneuver, get to where you can do this pretty quick and comfortable, all right? I want you guys to be free and loose with your legs so that they can work underneath of you and your hands can do something different. That is like rule number one. You have to be able to use your hands and your feet separate of each other. If you can't use your hands to do one thing and your feet to do another, you're going to have a monster of a time trying to train your horse, right? So get to where your feet can do one thing and your hands are free to do another, and it's not going to mess up anything you're making underneath. So my loops are very symmetrical, they're very accurate, there's pressure the whole way through, and I'm not swinging left or right. I don't have one leg stronger than the other, all right? So what this translates into is you're jogging your horse in a class, and they say, lope your horse, please lope. Right there. I maintained contact, I kept my weight in the stirrup, I kept balanced on my horse, I'm not over here like this, right? And it's not impossible for me to lift up into this position. That's how we put all three together, okay? So, lope your horse, please lope. Up into my left lead. Up into my left lead. Up, okay? Keep that in mind. It's so important to me, all right? Because the very first thing you have to be able to do, and a lot of times when I take my riders, the first thing we'll start doing is counter-cantering. And I want to see, as your coach, can you keep your spur close to your horse's side the entire time through a counter-canter and not be leaning off the outside, right? So say you're on your left lead, I don't want to see you doing this, leaning over, or right lead, I don't want to see you doing this, leaning over here on a counter-canter. I want you to be able to sit right here and shift that horse underneath of you, okay? So that horse stays square through everything and his hip swings around. I don't want you to go through and lean and then your leg comes off, okay? I want you to say, hey, I'm going to control and influence my horse's stride every step of the way, okay? That, to me, really separates the men from the boys. If you go to the Powers or the Congress and you watch the amateur, whether it's a level 2 or level 3 amateur, those are the riders, and I'm going to say girls because most of them are, those are the girls that have been doing this for a really long time and their whole lives. So they've been able to develop that ability to stay close to their horse. You cannot show a horse in today's world with your legs out here. We call it starfishing, right? Anytime I see you starfishing, you are not in control of your horse. And to me, if that's a horsemanship class, if it's an ec class, if it's a pleasure class, you're not in control of your horse, you're not riding. So you could judge your class based on how much contact or how much connection do they keep with their horse the whole way through. If you're right here and your leg falls off, then you missed a stride, right? And if your leg falls off for 6 strides, you missed 6 of them, okay? And there's only gonna be 50 when you lope, all right? So we show for 10 minutes at a time, most places you go. So if you break that down into 2 gears, or 3 gears, 2 directions, that's 6 different things that you gotta do and reverse. You don't really lope that long, right? Sometimes you lope a little bit longer in some classes than others, but be able to keep your legs close to your horse and maintain contact the whole time, okay? If you fall off and your leg isn't there and you're not influencing your horse's stride, you're gonna have a heck of a time showing in today's world. We have to stay down here, all right? Today's show horses have to be on loose rein, and you gotta be able to maneuver them off your feet if you wanna compete with the big dogs, okay? It kills me to see the people that will ride at a weekend show, and this is a separate conversation I don't want to get too far into, but they'll ride at a weekend show and they'll win and they didn't have their legs on. Okay? It doesn't do you any good to not be working towards this, because you're going to need it when you get to here, right? You're going to need it when you get to the top, because those riders are going to do it, all right? And if they can maintain contact and they can be sharper with their horses, then you have to do it, okay? So I don't want you to think like, oh, I'm fine, I'm winning right now, because you're going to go to the Congress, you're going to get beat, all right? So this is a skill that all of my riders have to be able to do. You have to be able to counter canter and then lope back across, do your figure eight like I did on Peanut in the last video, and do that and maintain contact with your spurs the whole way through. And what you'll find is you'll start your counter canter, and every stride, your leg's gonna fall off. What that means is if your leg falls off, you're not gonna be able to go up, 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 up around there. You're gonna fall off, and your horse is gonna go fast, fast, out there, out there, out there, because you're not saying up with you, all right? So really, really important you guys get effective with your legs. You have to, in today's world, be effective. If you can't come up to your horse and you can't make him come up to you and stay connected to him through all these maneuvers, you're in trouble. Okay, there's just no way you're going to be able to show at a top level. I call it riding on rails. So when you're out here and your legs are way off your horse and you're star fishing, I feel like I'm on a train, right? I feel like I'm on an Amtrak headed south. And I don't like to feel like I'm on rails just out of control. I like to be able to influence a stride if I need to, stay closer to my horse, because if I'm close, no different than the example that I gave about like punching something. If I start from this far away from my horse, or this far so you can see it, if my leg's this far away, by the time I get here, I'm gonna have a lot more contact, and a lot more speed, and a lot more aggressiveness than maybe I'm looking for, versus if I'm right here close to him, I can feel it before it becomes a problem. All right? And I can feel it and change it before it gets too bad, right? I don't want it to be like this big, I gotta fix my lope right now, right? That doesn't work. Western pleasure training horses, to me, is slow and methodical, and you just be a robot up there, right? You just come in solid, stay solid till your horse softens up, right? If you come in hard and fast, believe that horse is gonna know when you come out here with your leg what's happening next. Right? And what's he gonna do? The same thing you would do if you saw someone do this to you, right? You're gonna go, right? Your horse is gonna do the same thing, right? He's gonna come in and he's gonna be tight when you go to your feet. So stay right here so you can go soft to him, and he can stay soft and keep rhythm, so you're not messing up his stride, right? So I think that's about all I got for today. Questions, comments, concerns, type them now or forever hold your peace, right? No, I'm just kidding. You can leave a comment in there. I'll get back to them. I'll read them as we go. The video from last Tuesday, the showmanship video, the novice championship video, is not uploaded yet. I'm sorry. I live out in the middle of nowhere. The internet sucks. But it will be up, I promise. I'm going to, I don't know, do something, okay? So I want you guys to keep following, keep sharing, keep subscribing on YouTube. We added a lot of subscribers last week. Thank you so much. I love you guys for that. You're amazing. If you guys saw on Instagram yesterday, Macy was modeling the new black hollow denim. I'm a huge fan of those. They look incredible. They're going to be great in like the horsemanship and stuff. Remember to use our promo code LaRose30 for those, hollowdenim.com. You're going to love them if you haven't tried them yet. If you're on the fence, I'll tell you what, you're missing out, right? You're going to have to trust me on that one. They're incredible. Macy will tell you they're so soft, they're so stretchy, and we're going to do a little 5-day challenge. You heard it here first. That we're going to do a little 5-day challenge that, I don't know what we're going to call it. We're going to call it like the jean 5-day challenge, or the denim challenge, or whatever. So what I want to do, for 4 or 5 days, we're going to go as many as we can before Macy gets grossed out. She's going to wear those jeans, and I'm going to show you how they do not stretch out, right? So I want to put the denim to the test. So I dare you guys to take your competitor's jeans and wear them for 4 or 5 days straight and see what they look like, right? You're going to look like you just pooped your pants, right? So not good. Hollow denim doesn't do that. That fabric rebounds and stretches. We love it. We know you will love it. I wouldn't tell you about it if it didn't, right? So awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you probably this weekend. I'll do a follow-up video and I'll make the blog post and all that stuff. So love you guys. I'll talk to you this weekend. Have a great one. If you have questions, send them in. If you haven't followed on Facebook, if you're not liked on LaRose Show Horses, if you don't subscribe on YouTube, if you're not following on Instagram, you're missing out on good stuff. I'm giving it all away. Have a great weekend, guys. See ya.